Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Debbie Horovich, and I'm your host for this edition of the Silver Lining Storycast. This is the new interview storytelling series that I launched recently to encourage more participation and conversation in the anthology book series, The Silver Lining Storybook, which is similar to Chicken Soup for the Soul. And it's interesting because through this work, I discovered that we have so many amazing silver lining stories that exist, but we don't tend to talk about them. And often the reasons why we don't talk about them is because the silver linings to the story or to the experience, they usually come after a really dark and challenging, stormy period in our life. And we don't like to talk about those things because, especially when we're going through them, when you're right in the middle of the struggle and the fight, you cannot give up your position, step back and observe yourself from the outside at the exact same time. So generally we need some time to pass, lessen the emotional extreme of the challenge, and then you could really see where you stood up in that situation as your own hero, using your talents and your tools, sometimes things that we didn't even know we had access to. And then we can define and realize the value in those stories. What we're doing now and today is we're exploring in our past, when it's not so painful anymore, not so embarrassing, we're exploring where in our past times have turned around for us. Now that we can laugh at things in our past, our own crazy things that we do, we look back at these situations and we can see, how has it benefited us? How did it really guide us? And how did it show us a place in our life or an area of our personality that we need to improve? And ultimately, what we're doing in this conversation with the Silver Lining Storycast is we're exploring the truth in the saying that every storm cloud has a silver lining. My guest today is a business and sales legend, Jack Daly. He's the author of the book Hyper Sales Growth. And of course, his business strategies and his time and presence is endorsed by other best-selling book authors, but also he's endorsed by people like the CEO of Mutual Capital Alliance and 1-800-GOT-JUNK, and people who are inductees in the Marketing Hall of Fame. He's not only an author, of course, Jack is also an inspirational sales trainer and coach, a speaker, and a lot of his talents and skills come from 20 years in business, including several CEO stints. Basically, he knows how to sell and how to succeed. And today we're going to dig in deep and explore the stories and experiences, the stormy days and silver lining results of Jack Daly. Welcome, Jack Daly. I'm so excited you're here today.
Debbie, it's a blast. And I love the concept of your show, and I've been anxiously waiting to participate.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad that you're here. And I know a lot of people in my audience know who you are. And of course, with my introduction, a lot of people are going to be looking you up. But also, I think what we really bring to the table a lot of the time is the backstory. So I'm glad you're here today because we can dive right in and talk about what it is that makes you the success that you are and what it is that's going to help bring you further forward from where you are.
Yeah. So the big thing is all about focus. It's for me, it's all about you can't get there unless you know what there is. And so I'm a very goal-driven individual. Mm-hmm. I was really benefited early in my life by having some successful people vest in me and taught me the magic, if you will, of being focused on your goals. And as a result, that propels you through some of the hurdles that life throws at you as you make your journey through life.
Yeah, and you can't really avoid those hurdles, right?
Absolutely. That's just part of the deal.
Right. So sometimes you hit the hurdles and you fall face first.
You bet.
Okay, so let me ask you the first question that we had talked about from your life and your experience. What experience in your past is it that gives you the confidence for your future and for today that you know you could overcome anything that might present itself to you?
So there's so many different examples when I think about my life here. As an example that I'm not going to go into very deeply, but I can tell you that between the ages of 58 and 68 years old, I've completed 15 Ironmans. I can also tell you, though,
Incredible.
that there wasn't a single one where I didn't want to quit somewhere. Whether that was 3 flat tires in a race, or hyperventilating in the water on the first 3 minutes of the swim. Every one of those races had obstacles and challenges that I needed to overcome. But as I mentioned earlier, the goal of crossing the finish line 140.6 miles later was the impetus and the magnet that took me through there. Now, if I put that aside, I can also tell you that I built 6 companies from a blank sheet of paper into national firms in the U.S., and all of them were very fast growing. And as a speaker, we tend to only emphasize our successes. But I can tell you behind the curtain here that every one of those businesses had its down moments, and you had to deal with those down moments in order to get to what you were trying to build as your goal. And so I'll get very personal and tell a story that I rarely tell to an audience, and that is that what the audience would have heard was my pride of building a company that in 1998 was honored by Ernst & Young as Entrepreneur of the Year, and it was number 10 on the Inc. 500 list as the 10th fastest growing company in the U.S. with 10,100% growth. Now, if I were a peacock, all of my bright feathers would be shining. But the part that we tend to leave out is that 1 year after getting all of those accolades, I stood in front of our 275 employees and had to let 240 of them go that day.
Wow.
That was a function of the markets. The financial markets had changed so dramatically in that month that I had a significant amount of marketing dollars spent and a significant amount of prospects and customers calling and saying they wanted to do business, but I couldn't do business any longer because nobody on Wall Street would buy my product that I would be creating. And so I'm confronted with, well, what do you do? Do you close the whole thing? Do you recognize that there's some gold in there and get it down to a level that you could cash flow while you rebuild? And we chose the latter. We chose to slim it down to 35 people and take a shot at rebuilding. And I will tell you, Debbie, that for the next 2 years after that, we had hard work with lots of tears. And there were many days where you had to sit in front of a mirror and convince yourself that it wasn't you, and that you had to focus on the things that you needed to do in order to resurrect the business.
And let's talk a little bit about those sorts of tactics. Like, you're faced with having to let go of 240 people who are relying on you. How do you look at yourself in the mirror? What else do you tell yourself? Like, how do you prepare yourself physically for something like that?
I'm not sure that I'm the expert, but I can tell you that I was a basket case in front of the entire company as I announced the decision. Tears running down my face. One of the reasons we won Entrepreneur of the Year was because we had created a magical culture. It didn't feel like work; it felt like family. And as the owner of the business, if you have 275 employees, I don't think of my responsibility to 275. I think of it in terms of at least 2 other people in their family. Mm-hmm. So now we're approaching 1,000 people that I'm impacting that day. Exactly. At the same time, I don't have a lot of choices in front of me because my choices are very narrow. I'm losing $1 million a month if I stay as structured. Yeah. And so is it better for us all to go away?
Exactly. Close up shop entirely.
Or is it better for us to try and rebuild with a smaller group? Yeah. So we allowed a day of grieving for our family members that had left us. But the following day, we had to come in with an attitude of work hard and smart to rebuild so that someday we could rehire those family members that we had unfortunately had to let go that day before. Mm-hmm. And if we could take a mindset that said, we're going to rebuild and we're going to be successful again because we did it once, we can do it again, then we're going to invite many of those people back into our company, which indeed, I will tell you, happened, albeit over a 2-year period of time before we could rebuild.
Mm-hmm. That's still not that bad, though. I mean, being able to rehire people is awesome. How do you think something like that has specifically empowered you now?
Well, I think it's a series of building blocks, Debbie. I don't think it's one event. I think of each business. I think I go back to early times in my childhood, and think about things that occurred in those environments where I was confronted with challenges and how I dealt with them, and no matter how dark a moment is or how dark a day is, there is, as you say, silver linings. There's opportunities for us to look back and say, hey, as bad as it was, look at where we are today. Look at how it turned around 6 months later, 9 months later, 12 months later. There's a responsibility of the individual to deal with the circumstances in their life. But I can also tell you that as an individual, we don't have control of a number of things outside of our control. It's called life happens. Yeah. And when life happens, we have to go back to the core of our person that says many things have happened that haven't been pleasant. And here we are standing upright. So stand upright, push through, and let's work on the things that we learned in previous tough situations so that we can apply those learnings and get out of the hole that we're currently in.
Yeah, that's exactly it. For me, I sort of see it like building up the muscle. It's painful. It's painful to tear the muscle fiber and make it stronger and build it up. But you do get stronger and you get more powerful each time.
Without a doubt.
So what do you think? Here's something we didn't really talk about beforehand, but what do you think about the pursuit of overnight success?
Overnight success.
Or how about this one? Passive income.
Yeah. I feel like I'm on a comedic show now.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I 22 years ago, I left the business world as a business owner and decided to become a professional speaker. I was a highly recognized business person in the United States, on television, radio, newspapers, magazine articles, etc. When I switched hats and became what I called the starving speaker, it was as if I had leprosy. I couldn't get anyone to return my calls. I was persona non grata, and I was effectively the starving speaker, and working extremely hard to crack the code. It took me more than 3 years to figure out how to resurrect myself in a new, entirely different business line. And yet, today, 22 years later, the last 3 years, I've written 3 books that all have become #1 best-selling business book on Amazon in 3 consecutive years. I'm on the cover of magazines, and people are saying, "Man, oh man, you as a speaker are so awesome, and you literally you just came out of nowhere." And when I hear that comment, it's like, out of nowhere, I just spent the last 22 years of my life beating my head against the wall, trying to figure this out and fighting the hard battle.
Yeah. And yeah. So it doesn't really exist, the overnight success.
Yeah, I know I see it on television every once in a while. There's a few people that win a big lottery amount. I guess that might be overnight success, but man, oh man, the chances of you winning the lottery are slim and none. I think you better go to work.
I guess, but also it's the definition of success, and the sustained success, I think, is what people anticipate will happen. You can have big wins and still face a period afterwards where you can't do anything right.
So I love the point that you just made, how you define success. I was yesterday down at Ken Blanchard's complex of buildings, and most everybody knows Ken Blanchard, the famous author and speaker. And he has an organization that he's grown of probably 400 employees supporting him in all of the things that they're doing in the Blanchard companies. I could have a successful speaking, training, and coaching company with hundreds of speakers, trainers, and coaches. I know that's the facts. However, I decided when I got into this business, after building 6 businesses in the financial services models, I just didn't want employees anymore. So I have a lifestyle business. I work out of my home. I work where I want to work, when I want to work, and only with the people I choose to work. And I couldn't be happier. And every day I get up and look myself in the mirror and say, you're going to be approached with a lot of opportunities today. Don't screw this up. I don't measure my success on the size of my company or the size of my bank account. I measure my success on the size of my smile and my soul. And I know I'm in a great, great place.
Yeah. That's a great point. That's really, they're really looking at it from your own yardstick, your own measure of success. And being satisfied. Do you think that you were not satisfied earlier?
I would tell you that when I was in my 30s, the measurement of success was how visible I was in my industry and how big a house I could buy and the fancy cars and the money in the bank account. And the more that I could demonstrate to people that I had achieved those things, then I was successful. It quite frankly is a misnomer. there's probably people, there are probably more unhappy wealthy people than unhappy poor people, quite frankly.
What? Just because money doesn't buy happiness?
That's right.
Creates
Absolutely.
problems.
It's money doesn't buy happiness. If I were going to get a tattoo, it would be the number 168. That's a significant number for all of us. It's the number of hours we're allocated for each week to live. And sadly, people that are perceived to be successful, if they were reflect back on how they used their 168, it was probably pretty well abused and misused and underused. I treasure my 168. I have a client that came up to me in Australia in November and said 4 years ago they were in front of me and feeling like they were a failure, and they made less than $50,000 a year, and they had aspirations to be much bigger and better than that, but they just didn't know how to do it and couldn't find their way. And there was a lot of despair in this guy's voice. In November, 4 years later, he came up and asked on the stage at the break for me to give him a high five, because every year that I had been down there doing a workshop he attended, he said, I always walk out with 3 or 4 action items that really set my focus better. And now I have an absolute belief that I'm going to be successful. And quite frankly, if we wanted to define success by financials, I've doubled my income every year that I've come to you. In fact, this year, a total 100% commission salesperson, he said, I made $1 million this year.
Wow. In 4 years.
Now, yeah. Now, I will tell you, Debbie, that the feeling that I got that day from that man is far surpasses any fancy car I might put in my garage. That is what MasterCard would call priceless.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't help to have the nice car, but that's the value.
Yeah. You know, how do you measure success? I mean, that's how you started this discussion here often. You know, I think that's how each individual defines success. But once you've defined it, then it's all about being committed to taking the steps necessary to get there. And you need to recognize in that journey, no matter what your definition of success is, you are going to hit potholes and speed bumps along the way. It's just the way it is.
And unexpected too. I keep on reminding myself 80% of my life, the results that I get are unexpected results. I can only plan so many things. So many things happen.
You got it.
So you take responsibility of the 168, and that sets you up to overcome whatever's going to come.
If you were to go to my website, which is jackdaly.net, and Daly is Daly, there is a tab on it called Life by Design. And I have posted my goals, how I'm doing against my goals, and I've also posted my bucket list. And if you were to look at all of that material, you would see a guy that is very disciplined on that 168 hours. And I measure everything. Anything and everything that I'm doing as it relates to that 168, am I getting the optimal use out of my 168?
Wow.
I've taken it to almost the level of absurdity as to how many things I measure. I'll give you one that's way out there. About 8 years ago, I read an article that said that if you floss your teeth 5 days a week or more, compared to the non-flosser, you will live an extra 7 years, all other things equal.
Okay.
I was the guy that used to floss his teeth the day before, the day of, and the day after my dental appointment.
Mm-hmm.
I now floss my teeth every single day because I measure and write down whether I did it every day, and I have a goal on my website that says I'm going to floss my teeth daily.
Yeah.
Things that get measured get done. Now that's absurd. That's going over the top. But I'll give you a great example of using your time in your quality of life. I could be on the road sleeping in the hotels 300 days a year. That demand for my services is out there. But I would have no life and no wife.
Right.
And so my wife and I have been married for 47 years, and we sit down a year in advance and figure out how many nights we want me to sleep in a hotel for business, and we cap it at that, and that's all we allow our people to sell me.
Mm-hmm.
We identify how many nights I'm going to sleep at home and how many nights I'm going to sleep in resorts around the world for fun, and we track every night where I sleep, and we have a quarterly report, and I report to 5 people that I call the board of directors of my life to make sure that I'm staying true to what I said I was going to do.
Wow.
Does it work perfect? It does not work perfect, but it's pretty darn close. You run into these curveballs that life throws at you, and you have to adjust accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember 5 years ago, our daughter ended up being in the hospital in intensive care, seriously ill.
Mm-hmm.
And I had things that were on my calendar that I had to abort so that I could be bedside with her for a month.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, you can deal with the curveballs that life challenges you better because you've got your action plan together,
mm-hmm.
and you can focus on the items that are in your plan.
To me, it sounds almost kind of like you're anticipating and preparing for and then digging up the problems that you know for sure are going to happen. I don't know. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah. So as an example of that, I'll go back to the Ironman. At 58 years old, I did not know how to swim. If I put on my goals that I want to do an Ironman, well, the only way you're going to get there is by hiring a coach, learn technique, and the practice, and you have to schedule all of that out. It's no surprise that you can do it if you regiment yourself to that. But you can't just put a goal out there and not take the steps. There's no overnight successes out there unless you win the lottery.
Right. And even that's not. You can't hold on to that kind of money.
Right.
I think if you haven't worked for it in one way or another, if you haven't struggled for it, then you haven't built up the ability to know what to do with it and to hold on to it. And that's why so many lottery winners lose their winnings in a few years.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Very interesting. I just want to ask you one more question for the day.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that we were looking at, what I like to, talk about who guides you and who helped you along the way. What I'd like to find out is what's the most valuable piece of business advice that you ever received from whom that helps you through struggles now?
Well, we've been banging around that a little bit. When people ask me, what is the single most important ingredient to have success when you're a salesperson? And I would tell you that I think that I could give the same answer to anyone, not just a salesperson. But I actually have a YouTube video of about 2 minutes out there with me standing under the statue in London of Winston Churchill. And basically on the video, I say, if you want to know the single number one thing, it's grit. Grit. It is hard work. It is never, ever, ever give up. So that is a core constant that I find with people that are enjoying success in their life or their business. I wish I could give a more savory answer to your taste buds, but the people. Let's talk about the Summer Olympics that we just experienced. I watched those 16-year-old girls, women, competing as gymnasts for bronze, silver, and gold. Well, those 16-year-old girls doing a 3-minute floor exercise that would make me in the hospital after 15 seconds got there by practicing and doing hard work for hours and hours a day since they were 6 years old. There's no overnight success there. Yeah. It's grit. It's hard work all the time. I would also tell you, though, I also found in my life that wasn't enough, that you could be overlooked and be taken advantage of if you didn't let people know that you were delivering the results. That, in other words, you need to promote yourself so that the perception of value is there, that you're doing something that's over and above what other people are doing, performing at a level over and above what other people are performing. And so there's a bit of self-promotion that's necessary, and it goes along with the hard work.
Do you find that people are held back by sort of waiting for permission to promote themselves?
Absolutely. And I will also tell you that I was that person in my 20s. I was a bright, hardworking guy that believed that I would be recognized and rewarded for those efforts. I also was working in a company where someone was promoted over me that didn't have the results or the work ethic, the grit, or any of the attributes that I had. But I not only was passed over once, I was passed over 3 times in the same company, but they were doing a better job of self-promotion. And so at 28 years old, I went out and got my hair redone. I changed my clothing, and I literally, according to my wife, became somewhat of a different person. I didn't give up the work ethic, but I started to toot my own horn. I ultimately, within 5 years later, became the president of that company.
And really, you just stopped waiting for permission.
You betcha.
You just took control of saying where you're awesome, where you're doing amazing things, and letting people know. Because if you don't let them know, how would they possibly know?
Right. And here's the thing. I could have made a different decision, and after being passed over once, twice, or 3 times, I could have done what a lot of people do and say, well, I'm leaving this company. They don't appreciate what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Well, you might be going from the hot pan to the fire. Who knows? If the company, my assessment was, this is a good company. This is a company that I know. This is a business I like. Figure out what's not working, rather than give up the track. Otherwise, I'll be jumping from company to company and being equally frustrated everywhere I go. So people knew who I was and what I was doing. I just wasn't doing a good enough job of promoting myself to the business for them to make that recognition. Once that happened, then a myriad of good things followed. It was incredible.
Interesting. How do you know what things to change about yourself if you want to start taking responsibility for how people perceive you and see you? How do you know what to change?
I think I'm going to go back. I'm an old guy here, so I'm going to go back to the old Ben Franklin analysis. Draw a line down the middle of the page. Got two columns. One column is for pluses and one's for minuses, and be very serious with yourself. What are you bringing to the party that are pluses, and what's missing from the success model here? And what was missing from the success model was I'm going to call it, I was gray. I blended in and became invisible to most people in the company.
Yes.
I was that good green-eye shaded accountant doing the numbers and doing the work and doing the overtime. But I was not visible in the company. Yeah, the Clark Kent Superman is a great analogy.
Yeah, you were everyman.
That's it.
In, which is a safe place. I totally understand that. I talk about invisibility all the time because that's where I started as well.
You know, I have a magazine of my own called Get Jack, and in the most recent issue, there's a article in it that's called "How Bad Do You Want It?" And I ask myself that question. And I ask my audiences, my friends, my family, and I ask you and the listeners, how bad do you want it? What are you willing to sacrifice or put up with? Because in order to get to your end zone, whatever your end zone is, again, there are always obstacles and potholes. They're always out there.
You will have to make sacrifices.
Absolutely.
Things that you didn't even think you would have to give up on, you will have to. And happily, though, you'll make the decision, oh, I really didn't need to be doing that.
I've learned the art of saying no more than the art of saying yes.
Yes. I would.
You know what? If you don't learn the art of saying no, then other people will be gobbling up your 168 hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly it. I was going to say it extends to choosing your clients as well, picking them very carefully. And absolutely, it's very easy for someone new in business or just getting started to take on the wrong clients and have all of their time gobbled up by the wrong things.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, it's been great chatting with you today. I think we've gone a little bit over the 30 minutes, but you had lots of stories to share. So I thank you for your time and for your energy, Jack. And I really hope that you'll have the opportunity to come back again to the Silver Lining Storycast and share some more stories with us.
That would be awesome. Let's go make that happen.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time again. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.